While all of that was happening, her former boss, Adam Bandt, was at the National Press Club. Now, this is the future of Australian politics, whether we like it or not, which is that the Greens vote is increasing. Now, remember, the game of the Greens has always been to run in every single lower house seat in the attempt to get people into the upper house. But then slowly but surely, as generations of new young voters come in, they start voting Greens first rather than Labor first, and slowly but surely they start taking Labor seats. Now, while all the conversation is about how the Teals have ruined the Liberal Party forever and they'll never get to 76 seats, never forget here that it was the Labor Party that lost several seats to the Greens, including Griffith in Brisbane, which I'll get to in a second. But Adam Bandt made it very clear today that they've had enough of being in the sidecar. They want to drive the electric motorcycle. Have a look.
As the Liberals become irrelevant and Labor shifts to the centre-right, the Greens' aim for the next decade is to grow our power and make real change in this country. People face insecure work and insecure housing. Real wages are going backwards, as is the quality of life. People are worried about the future and they face a cost of living and a climate crisis. People reject racism, transphobia and ableism, and they want real action on the environment.
To illustrate my point, I again talk about the seat of Griffith in Queensland, a former Prime Minister. This was his seat. And we go from the 2013 election when he lost that election, but still, in that seat, 40% of people voted Labor, 10% voted Greens. At the next election, under the Ghost, Labor 33, Greens 17. 2019, it was 31 to the Greens 24. And then guess what happened when the revolution was on its way? The Greens outpolled Labor, and it was Labor preferences that helped the Greens win as opposed to Greens preferences helping Labor win. Now, I may be a dreamer here, Joe, and certainly the strategic people in the Labor Party will say, oh, it's only the Teals that are eating away at the Libs. The Greens are eating away at Labor.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And the Teals will end up eating away at Labor as well if it moves further to the left and becomes a party for upper middle class socialists. And we've seen that already in the Victorian election where a couple of really nice leafy Teal seats were scooped up by the Andrews government while it actually went backwards in traditional working class seats like, for example, Werribee. And what did they do in those seats, by the way? The right-wing MPs there flipped to the left in an act of political cowardice and bastardry, but that's another matter.
I love factional talk.
Yeah, that's right. But the problem is that, so yes, I think this will inevitably have to happen. The problem is there are a few people in Labor, especially on the left, who think that the Greens are just sort of harmless hippies who just help out Labor where it's needed. We've now seen at the federal election where Labor should have won 80 seats plus and was on track to do so, where it lost 3 seats in Brisbane that it expected to win. You mentioned the one that Terry Butler lost. It was also expected to pick up the seat of Brisbane itself and the seat of Ryan, and the Greens stole those instead. Now, that is all well and good, but Labor, just like the Libs will never, the Libs don't need to antagonise the Teals and give them a reason to raise more money like they did with their stupid voice stance, which they could have left alone. But, the Libs are never going to be able to out-left the Teals.
Correct.
They're never going to be able to have a harder climate position that those happy-clappy activists will accept. And Labor will never be able to outflank the Greens on the left. So it has to move to the centre. And so just like the Teals are forcing the Libs to the right, the Greens are actually forcing Labor to the centre. The difference is the centre is where it should be, where it wants to be.
Thankfully, a perfect example of this centre that they are finding is that they're increasing taxes on 10 million people to $1,500, but they're giving everyone who works at the ABC $1,500. So they're dealing with the centre. Well, they're absolutely dealing with the centre.
That is what ABC management is doing with, with obviously public money, but it is not. That is not a decision of Jim Chalmers or Anthony Albanese.
Slight pot of money, but okay, all right. But I want to talk. Get other people in here. Corey. But this kabuki theatre, right, where Labor tries to pretend to have a crack at the Greens, but they are fully empowered by them, their preferences get them in. But they need to understand that the Greens will only play second fiddle for so long, and they are coming for them. But Labor is going to be in this scenario where, okay, it might work for another couple of elections, but we're going to end up in a scenario where the Teals mean Libs can't get to 76, and the Greens mean Labor can't get to 76.
Paul, that's how I see it playing out actually going forward, and the wise heads in the Labor Party know this. We do not want in this country some sort of parliament made up of representation like Germany or Italy and all these minor fragments. Right? I think it's important we have representation in the Senate, I really do, but the party of government needs to be able to govern. And Labor, the wise heads in Labor know there's a problem there. The Liberal Party wise heads know there's a problem there for their brand as well. How they fix it, I'm not sure, because I think they've let it go far too far in order to arrest what looks like a bit of a terminal decline over the longer term.